Thank you, Ernie, for the wonderful introduction and the short introduction too, because you can read my bio on the website. It sounds really fun and fascinating, but we're going to talk about contract management language and policy, so it's going to be kind of boring. So I hate to disappoint. Let me set expectations now. I am not sharing any NASA secrets or data. I'm not showing any pictures from the International Space Station. So I hate to disappoint. If that's what you came for, here's your time to leave. Okay, no one's leaving, thank you. But I am gonna make what is usually unglamorous and unsexy and cyber sexy this morning. I've had the pleasure of geeking out, so I know you guys are probably geeking out with me, but I've had the pleasure of geeking out with all of you today and this week. Some exciting presentations that already come before me. So I hope you guys got all the technical stuff from those folks, because I'm gonna talk about a little bit of kind of untechnical world. And because I have this kind of dorkish personality, I always have to put in something that I'm interested about. And so it is March Madness. Come on, basketball fans. Come on, basketball fans. Yes. So I had to insert a little bit of my love for the game into my presentation, so bear with me as I go through this. I'm a little nervous. I'm just going to put that out there as well. So I know you guys have been cheering for me this whole time. I appreciate it. But I also put expectations up front again for you all and also for me, so that at the end, when you're wowed, you're gonna be like, wow, okay? And there's a cool video at the end too, so stay here or you're not gonna see the video. So I talk about this as a road to the Final Four again because it is March Madness, and to do that, I have to talk about the wonderful Lady Gamecocks at the University of South Carolina. If you know anything about me, I always tell folks, I'm from South Carolina, a small town, the smallest of towns in South Carolina, and I'm proud to be from a rural area. I feel like big things come from small towns. I meet a lot of people from rural America, and I'm proud to be from rural America. But the Gamecocks, let's go to the Gamecocks. The Gamecocks are here in the finals. They are in the Sweet 16 right now. They're about to embark on what could be their third national title, right? So I'm excited. And this is a personal picture from the university in front of our student union. And it's one of the ones that I was legally allowed to put into the presentation. Let me just be clear about that. And so this is in front of our student union on the grounds there. So it's a beautiful campus if you ever get a chance to go. But people talk about the Lady Gamecocks as a dynasty, a new dynasty. And we hear all these headlines about them coming up and being a part of this dynasty after a summit with the Volunteers. The Gamecocks may be the next. So I had to insert that here. But if you've been following the journey of the Gamecocks, you know about the highlighters, the behind the scenes people, which is what I'll be talking about, the behind-the-scenes stuff for hacking, for red teaming. The highlighters, as they are affectionately called, is a group of men who play against the Lady Gamecocks to prepare them for the games. They do the recognizance. They study the teams they're going to be playing, and then they come along and they play defense like those teams to prepare the Gamecocks to win those games and dominate. And they've been dominating. They have absolutely been dominating this year. Dawn Staley attests that their success has been to the highlighters, the behind-the-scenes people helping them to be successful. So here are the headlines for cyber. A woman dies during a ransomware attack at a German hospital. These are the headlines that you guys may see and hear, right? And that person didn't die just because of the ransomware. That person died because they had to redirect their care to another hospital and they died along the way. That's why what you do is so important, right? Because there are literally lives at stake. And the same thing that we have to take care of in cyber at NASA Kennedy Space Center is the same thing that everyone is dealing with, right? I'm just the messenger because my title sounds cool and I work at a cool place. But literally, people's lives depend on what we're doing. Right, so all that cool stuff about that Brianka is teaching about hacking, do it for good, be an ethical hacker, right? Do it for good, because there really are lives at stake. In 2020, someone again passed away because their ambulance had to be redirected to another hospital because of a ransomware attack. That is the first time that someone's death has been directly tied to something that happened in cyber. And attacks on healthcare facilities are becoming more and more common. We talked about that earlier too, the attack on some of the other healthcare facilities that are happening. And it is found that hospitals are experiencing data breaches at a rate that is shocking to most. As many as 36 additional deaths per 1,000 heart attacks occur annually because of technology, ransomware. In 2019, there was a 20% increase in healthcare facilities being affected by electronic breaches, records breaches, 38 million healthcare customers affected. We all have healthcare, right? So just imagine that. Another headline, I know you guys hear about this. MGM, computer attack. In September of 2023, MGM ended a 10-day computer shutdown in an attempt to minimize impacts from a cyber attack, compromise a wide spectrum of systems there, right? Same things I'm trying to do at NASA Kennedy Space Center. They compromise everything from check-in to bedding, which is their big business, right? All those systems were attacked from one person doing, probably a whole host of folks, I wouldn't say one, but from not having separated networks, right, so they're very integrated. Those are things that we're trying to do also at Kennedy Space Center. $15 million they had to pay for ransomware. $15 million. So at Kennedy Space Center, we tell our users, we don't pay ransomware. We do not pay ransomware, so you need to have a backup of your system because we do not pay rent. I gave you $15 million. Do I get all my data back? Do I not? Are you gonna come back later and ask me for another $15 million? When does it stop, right? So I use these headlines to have this conversation about cyber at Kennedy Space Center. Both companies, MGM, as well as Caesars Palace, they had to reduce some reporting to SEC later about this incident. So when you hear cyber, you hear the headlines, hackers and ransomware, phishing and smishing. You hear about patch management, but are you hearing the highlighters? Privacy, standards, security plan management, user training, right? Are you hearing those things? Assessments and audits, are you hearing risk management, those types of words? So here are our headlines for space industry. The US space industry is continuously being subject to foreign spying. Continuously. The United States spends $130 billion in the in the space industry. In the space industry. We are only ahead of China. They spend $79 billion, right? But because we know of this, a warning was issued in August of last year from the National Counterintelligence and Security Center, FBI, and the Air Force, warning us that these entities are trying to get our intellectual property, right? So again, we talk about devices, but really it's the data. It's the data as a person individually, is also the data for the various industries that we support. So the advisory recommended the following, which actually talks about what I'll be talking about, these 4 areas. Making sure that we incorporate cybersecurity in all of our third-party contracts, monitoring and compliance, build resiliency and redundancy in operations. So think of MGM. If they had redundancy in their operations, they may have not had such an issue. Companies need to make sure they carry out a robust third-party supplier understanding, right? And also we need to do enterprise-wide security, right? From human resources to legal to protective services, all those things need to incorporate cybersecurity, which is an area in government that we struggle with in some cases, but we're doing better at. NASA has an online presence of approximately 3,000 websites. That is crazy, right? And that's NASA as an agency, not just Kennedy Space Center, so I just want to make sure that's clear too. 42,000 publicly available, accessible websites, right? Like, we're in the business of sharing information. When you have a bunch of scientists and engineers, they're always wanting to work together, which we want to facilitate that, but we want to be able to do that securely. These are the types of systems that we support with NASA. So you have everything from your common desktop end user services device to the work we do in support of the International Space Station. So that's why cyber is so important to us. By 2025, Gartner states that 60% of organizations will make decisions on who they're going to partner with based on how they do cybersecurity. Right? So again, I love all the glamorous stuff about cyber. The unglamorous is what gets us in trouble a lot of times in industry. So when we talk about incorporating cybersecurity requirements with all of our vendors and suppliers, for the government, specifically for Kennedy, that's challenging because we make contracts that last 5 to 10 or even more years. So how do you do that in an environment that's changing rapidly, right? What we did yesterday isn't what we're doing today. So how do you do that? It's about having a workforce, you all, right? A workforce that is always connected with what's happening in tech, and also having those requirements be written in a way that are flexible to our user for this landscape. And this is a big challenge for us because we are heavily reliant on contract language, right? So I always tell folks, I sound great, but I don't push buttons, right? I don't push any buttons. We do have a lot of contractor staff that supports us at NASA and Kennedy Space Center. Build resiliency and redundancy in your operations, right? So if you understand the principles of cybersecurity, CIA, not that other agency that I won't talk about, right? You understand confidentiality, integrity, availability. Those principles are guiding principles in cyber. So who needs to have it? Is it available to them? And you vet who they are, right? Companies have an urge to sacrifice cybersecurity requirements to save money. I always tell folks, we might not be in your profit margin, but you will lose money if somebody hacks your system. If I got to pay credit, monitoring for 1,000 employees, right? But we find a lot of times with the contracts that we levy at the government, sometimes that's where they want to cut the cost first, is in the cybersecurity requirements, and that's challenging for us. So what we want to make sure is that people have the right protocols in place to minimize those cybersecurity threats. They document, they test, contingency plans, they make sure they have functional segmentation, they prioritize, business continuity. Again, the highlighters, right? Because we've heard a lot about the headlines since I've been here. I've enjoyed myself, right? But implementing cybersecurity in an organization should be like building your home, right? You wouldn't build your house and put windows in without locks on it, or a door without a lock. You might even take it a step further and put in a security monitoring system, right? So when you think about working for, starting contracts, building those types of requirements, you want to do it from that standpoint. You want to put as much cybersecurity in your requirements as possible. Second is companies should be advised to carry out a robust due diligence to their third-party suppliers. The use of technology is increasing in every aspect of Kennedy Space Center, from construction of facilities to our fitness center. We actually have a treadmill that monitors employees and astronauts, I'm sure, at Johnson Space Center, right? So industrial control systems. We have spent $19.9 billion in 2022 for procurements at NASA, over 26,000 procurements, and that's how much we spend. So now you see why cyber is important for us, right? And it's an increase of counterfeit equipment that's becoming a challenge for us now. We're seeing a lot of that happening in our environment in some cases. So that's where people can bury malware, they can put in microchips, those kind of things. So we are really trying to make sure that our workforce has an understanding of cybersecurity. And so how do we do that? We make sure that the requirements are in those contracts. So think about the Target incident that happened during the holidays a few years ago, that Target lost all this customer data, and they didn't lose it because someone came and put a chip where you pay your credit card information, right? Because that'd be too obvious. Actually, somebody hacked the third-party HVAC system, and that's how they compromised the account of 70 million customers through the HV system. Like, who would have thought in a million years, right, that someone would get through the air conditioner, and not from the spy movies where somebody's, crawling through, to find out, but actually from that company being vulnerable, and they're now connected to Target. 70 million customers lost their data, right? Or third-party supplier, NASA. A former NASA aluminum manufacturer had to pay $46 million after non-compliance to contract specifications. $46 million. Like, Real money, you guys. Not what's in my bank account, but real money, right, is what's happening. So loss of life. So earlier we talked about loss of life, and we're talking about money. And when you start hitting people where their pockets are, that's really when people take notice of what's happening in cyber. Foster, lastly, because I told you I wasn't going to be long. I don't like to be long before you. So lastly is fostering an enterprise-wide cybersecurity operation at your company. I have seen and I have been a part of cyber being siloed from everybody, right? The cyber people are those people over there, the minions down below, right, who are out working in the middle of the night. But we really should see cyber as a part of and not just an in addition to. Typically, organizations have not included cyber, again, in HR, in procurement, in legal, in physical security. I tell folks now, my analogy I like to use is, we don't just buy a refrigerator anymore. We buy a refrigerator connected to the internet. It tells you the milk is out and the order is for Walmart, right? That's now an IT system. So think about the places where IT is built into an organization, and that's where you need to put in the cybersecurity requirements. Viewing cyber as a core requirement, and not in addition to, is where we need to move forward. And at NASA, that's what we are doing. Our CIO at the agency level, right? So I'm the CISO at Kennedy Space Center, and we have a CISO at every center. So every center has a CISO because our operations are so unique at each center and what we do for the overall mission at NASA. We report to a NASA CISO who's listening to integrate what's happening across the agency. So our NASA CIO, his office is currently transforming our organization to do just that, to be an enterprise, to see us all as one. Because what I do at Kennedy affects someone at Johnson. And it's not just a Houston, we have a problem. I could pivot from a network at Kennedy to a network at Johnson or something at Stennis or at Armstrong, depending on how we're connected, right? And so it's very important that we understand each other's operations and how we are interfaced. We're brothers, not just cousins, is what I tell people, right? So the agency has started to integrate cyber into all of its acquisition processes, from materials purchases to supply chain, from equipment disposal. We do a lot of vulnerability management. Of course, we do a lot of pen testing and software lifecycle, because every part of what we do has to incorporate cybersecurity, as I mentioned above. So it's great to know that at NASA and Kennedy Space Center, we are doing what the recommendation was from the advisory board, right? And I hope that you as technicians understand that that's what should be happening within your own organizations. So, again, I like to keep it short and sweet because this is not the sexy part of cyber, and I don't want y'all falling asleep, and I saw a couple yawns already. I'm coming to find y'all. It's early, it is early. So when you hear cybersecurity, right, you hear hackers and ransomware and phishing, but don't forget the highlighters. They are important to the work that we are doing as technicians. It's important to the work we do in management. It's important to lives. It's important to our money. Data integrity is important. So when you hear the headlines, think about where the highlighters may have mispracticed, right? Did they do something in supply chain? Did they have a privacy program? Did they do an assessment and an audit? Did they do some red teaming and blue teaming, right? Do they have good standards? Are they listening to maybe what's put out by NIST? Have they have service availability? Do they have data integrity? And do they have user training? And I say user training because one user, especially with this latest Avanti attack that happened, I know organizations that said it got in because someone clicked on an email, right? So if they have that user training, those are the highlighters. So there are 3.5 million openings in cyber in 2025. 3.5 million openings. You need to have these types of skill sets in addition to the technical, right? Because you guys are amazing. Again, y'all have been geeking out over me. I have been geeking out over y'all all day, yesterday. They need problem-solving skills. They need to be able to do analytical data work. They need to have reading and comprehension, right? Not just reading and comprehension. Attention to details, soft skills. Because again, I'm a techie too. I look like I'm doing a great job up here, but I'd rather be down in the basement with the minions typing away as well. They need to be able to communicate. They need to be able to do all those things for the workforce that we are training up to make sure that we don't lose lives, that we don't lose more money, and that we have a well-rounded cybersecurity workforce. So with that, if you stayed with me, because I'm actually ending, believe it or not, I would be remiss if I got up here and not tell you about the wonderful organization that I work for. We are now accepting astronaut applications. And applications are open. Someone's excited back there. I heard them clapping. Yes. Applications are opening until April 16th. So if you are interested in becoming an astronaut, go apply. I just watched a movie a couple days ago called A Million Miles Away, and it's about our first astronaut that was a migrant farm worker who applied 11 times and got in on number 12. So if it's been your dream to be an astronaut and you've applied, apply again. If you never considered, consider, because we need cyber people, right? We need cyber people in space, why not? And I leave you with this video. Only those who risk going too far can possibly know possibly find out how far they can go, is T.S. Eliot's quote. And I love this video because it gets me excited about the work that I do every day. And so I hope you guys have learned some things from me today. And that is the end of my presentation. And I always leave this quote with, but if you're in cyber, bring a risk matrix. Thank you.